Hi, and welcome to Leadership Stars by Linda Patten. And today's episode, I get a chance to interview one of my favorite people, Ruth Schwartz. Ruth has been a leader for as long as I've known her, and I love the fact that she comes out of the music industry, and I know she has a little bit to tell us about her background. But this series is really about the skills of leadership and what it takes to really begin to lead your teams in such a way that they are successful, and hopefully to get you off what I call the hamster wheel or the roller coaster of recruiting, so that you can actually begin to retain those team members who also want to build teams and help you and help themselves to be highly successful in the industry that you're in. So today, I'd like to welcome Ruth Schwartz to being on our program. And Ruth, welcome.
Thank you so much, Linda. It's great to be here.
Thank you. And Ruth, if you would give us just a little bit about your background. I know you have 25 years in the music industry, and I know you must have started when you were only 2, right?
Yeah, when I was 2. Actually, my entrepreneurialism does go back at least until college. And really, the beginning of my story is in the winter of 1979. I was a freshman in college, and I was sitting on the couch watching television with some friends, and we were watching a news report about a riot happening in Houston, Texas. And it turned out that it was a rock and roll riot. And that was the riot that changed my life, because that was the day I got up off the couch and I bought 3 tickets for me and my friends to go see the Sex Pistols at Winterland in San Francisco. And I sat there in the audience, just choked up, a sea of leather-clad, pogoing punk rockers, because the first time in my life I had felt I belonged somewhere. I just thought I had just been weird, and it turns out there was lots of weirdos. And I immediately transferred myself to San Francisco State University as a broadcasting student, and that's when entrepreneurialism and do-it-yourself and an incredible music scene that I immersed myself into, and we created so much together. Record labels, magazines, radio programs, a community center, a store, a mail order service. And then after 2 years of working for another record company, I went out on my own because I had inadvertently come into an industry unwittingly that is one of the most corrupt industries in the world, I think, the entertainment business, and specifically the music industry. I was in deep protest. I was really in deep protest, and I said to myself, and this is this sort of anger that fuels so much leadership and entrepreneurialism is really about, if stealing from people is the way that an industry works, then how easy would it be to be successful and be fair and honest? And so that's really when it started for me. I was 23 years old when I started my business, and in distribution in the music industry, and I went on for the next 23 years to create a $10 million distribution company, which is a lot of punk rock records. It's a lot of punk rock records.
That is a lot of records. Well, congratulations, and that sounds really awesome. And you truly were a change leader in the music industry. I know, having watched a little bit of Empire, it's like, wow.
Okay.
An amazing amount of corruption and ego and all of that. So I know, Ruth, that you have a story about leadership, and I'd love you to tell that little bit of a story about leadership and personality.
Oh, okay. Well, just to, sort of tie up the knot of, it didn't just start like amazingly at the age of 23. I became, running a multi-million-dollar company. Of course, I had to learn everything I knew on my feet. And now, many years later, I'm a coach and consultant, and I work with other business leaders to create what I call a high-performing team, because that's what happened in that business. But what happened to me in the business is that I got a really intense wake-up call a few years into that business. In fact, one of my first employees, who was working side by side with me in, rapid startup mode, we were just like pedaling as fast as we could. And he was my peer. We were 25 years old. We were doing this thing. We didn't know where we were going yet. And he walked out on me. He walked out, and I was completely clueless. I went and knocked on his door that day and said, "What are you doing? Why are you walking out?" And he let me have it. Basically, I was a jerk, an arrogant, awful, terrible boss. And it started me on this journey because I knew at that moment, standing there in his living room, I'll never forget it, that I was not standing in my values. I was not being the person that I wanted to be. And I had to start to learn some other ways of not replicating every heinous workplace in the world. And it had to start with me. So I discovered a few things along the path to try to keep this portion of the story brief. One is that I realized that, one, it really does start here. Like it has to start within the leader. I mean, I had to really start to shut up and listen to people and recognize what was going on around me. Number two is that, I'd always believed that, and along with just shutting up and listening to people, is this belief that you're supposed to know everything. You're supposed to be, know how to do everything, and you're supposed to know how to solve all the problems, and, people are looking at you, so, you're on the spot, do those things, and contrary. So when I shut up and started listening to people, I recognized that they were kind of smart, actually, and they were solving problems and doing things all day long without me, just fine. And the second thing, and where I really want to focus today, and I'll add a third thing later, is that I really thought it was my job to motivate everybody. And I think a lot of leaders do this. We feel like we have to be rah, or carrots and sticks and all this kind of stuff. And all the business tomes are all about that. And it never really worked. Carrots don't work. People don't care about carrots. People don't care about sticks. They never worked for me. Everybody can see through the rah stuff, right? I mean, there's a moment for rah, but only when it's, everybody pulling together, then that really works. Otherwise, nobody wants it. It's see-through, not really transparent, but see-through. So I had to figure out, well, what do I do? And I studied and I looked around and everything, but when it really came back down to it, it was really just to look inside myself and figure out, who do I follow? Why do I follow them? It's not because of carrots and sticks. And it's not because of rah. It's because 99 times out of 100, it's because they saw me. They really listened to me. And I had been practicing this new shut up and listen thing. But now I had to take it to the next step. It's like, oh, they make me feel really good about myself. They make me feel, they're not looking at my weaknesses. They're looking at my genius. They're drawing out my genius. They're helping me be a better me. And when that happens, you get a whole bunch of people around feeling like extremely empowered. You create that. And that's really the lead into what I had been saying, we should talk about, because one, we have to be able to see our own genius, and we have to say, okay, there's these things that we're great at, and there's our weaknesses and our strengths, but what if we just focused on our strengths, right? And what if we started to really see the strengths in the people around us and make them a better person, right? And what if we built the teams around us, and built all the people around us so that, whatever you're really awesome at, it could be my weakness. And then I don't have to worry about, changing and upgrading my weaknesses, right? I can just be my awesome self.
Right.
and they can be their awesome self. Does that make sense?
It does, Ruth. And I think you made a couple of really wonderful points. First of all, you're right. You need to be the inspiration as a leader, but it doesn't need to be rah-rah. It can be around the vision that you're creating for the organization that you're working with, and for them to be able to see that and to inspire them through where they're going, how they're getting there, and what's in it for them, and how do you make their vision happen. And I know, and you do too, that you can't motivate anybody. All you can do is set up an environment such that what they feel motivates them is possible. And I think that's really key, to recognize the fact that it's like you can't push a rock. You have to.
You can't make a rock drink either.
It's like the old, you can't lead a horse to water. And make it drink.
Yeah, exactly.
So I think that those were really two key areas. And one of the things that I also find interesting in your story is the fact that, and I've had other leaders on the program who've said the same thing. I went into business and didn't think about the fact that I had to be the leader, and that I had to build a team that would complement me in order for us to be highly successful. I thought I could just delegate things and it would all get done and I wouldn't have to worry about it. And that truly they were more of a reluctant leader that had to finally step in, step up, and step out and own that leadership in order for the business that they were doing to be successful, and for the people who are with you to stay with you and to truly perform at their highest capacity. And I think that's really, really key. Yeah.
Well, two things. One point is that, I definitely think that delegation is a beginning point. It has to go way beyond delegation, because there's so much of delegation that doesn't work for us. Because what we're doing is we're just taking tasks and we're tossing it at somebody and saying, do it. And so a lot of leaders will tell you that their experience with that is that people don't do it the way they want them to do it, or it's a yo-yo. It keeps coming back. They can't get rid of it. So how do people own it? And it really is upping that level of communication so people are really all in their genius. And my bigger point is this. And this is my experience with building high-performing team within that business that I grew, and now helping other people to do the same thing, is that people will not into their genius and won't become a real part of a team and an organization unless they absolutely understand the vision, for one, just like you say, but what their impact is on the big picture.
Yeah, I think that's so key. One of the things when I used to manage projects, and I still do, but was really a project manager, I remember the folks who had like one or two little steps in the project that maybe early on, maybe later or whatever, but they never knew how what they did impacted the project as a whole. And so they didn't get a sense of how valuable their contribution was to, again, the overall project. And I think that's critical. As you said, it's communicating that, bringing them in to see where their piece fits in the overall scheme of things. I know I was with the phone company up in Bellingham, Washington, doing some project management, and I actually got them to hang a sheet on the wall in their lunchroom that showed the major milestones of a particular project. And each time they finished a milestone, they put a picture on the sheet so that anybody coming into the lunchroom knew exactly where that project was. And if they were on it, they knew sort of when was it time for them to perform. Plus, they got a lot of kudos and congratulations and wow, that's wonderful. So a little bit of celebration there as well. So it was really key to really, as you said, to incorporate everyone and to let them know what the value is of their contribution. That's really
right. So here's another layer to that, because there's lots of different really cool ways like that to basically, another great metaphor, let everybody see the whole elephant, But if I have one tiny little piece and I don't understand where in the elephant it belongs, or if it's even important to the elephant, I'm not really empowered or excited by it. But what if not only did I understand what my actions were doing the whole, but that what my genius in that one little action actually is. right? So for instance, for some people, it's a really minute piece of detail, and they're really, really detail oriented, and nobody else really understands that detail. And so they're seen not just as somebody who gets this thing done, but who has this ability to see that detail. Maybe it's a quality control thing, but there's even more little obscure things. And this is what I mean by actually understanding behavioral genius. There's sort of a battle sometimes in the personality battles, like somebody's a big picture person and somebody's a small, I call them the forest and the tree people. So some people see the forest and some people see the trees. But you also, along within that those behavior styles, you have people who are risk takers, right? And they want to leap. They just want to forge ahead, and they're ambitious and competitive, and they move forward, and they can move forward very quickly. And sometimes they leave people sort of languishing behind them. But there's but that genius in them is that they are the risk taker, right? And they are acknowledged for that. But there's another kind of genius that's kind of contrary to that, which looks like the stubborn, stable person who doesn't want to leap ahead. But what I try to help teams do is say, oh, great, when we identify this genius in somebody, and I tell those people who want to leap ahead, it's like, always try a new habit. Always turn to that person, right? And don't see them as a hindrance to you, but ask them, why shouldn't I leap? And that person is all of a sudden, they're like in their power because they know all the reasons not to do something.
Right.
And this is like, oh, but there's all these reasons to do it. But if you recognize that person for their ability to answer that question, wow, they're just on fire. They're like lit up. They're seen, they're heard, they're understood, because a lot of times they get left in the dust. Right now, it doesn't mean that impacts all your decision making. I mean, it might be like, oh, well, we're still going to go, or oh no, we're going to stay. But you're acknowledging this innate genius and making people feel valuable, not just for the task that they do, but the behavior that they have inside of themselves.
Yeah, and that is so very important. And Ruth, you were talking before we got on camera about being comfortable in your skin. And I presume that was regarding your personality style. And then from that, how do you help others be comfortable in their skin, personality-wise?
Yeah, well, I think that when you have, in the same way that I tell people who seem sort of contrary to each other, who might actually get embattled with each other in an organization or on a team, they actually respect each other for it. And there's a couple of different practices. One is to get real clear about what your style is, right? To understand it. So personally, in my practice, I use assessments so that people can around what is, and they learn that those things that others would call weaknesses are just things that they get to let other people do, right? In other words, I'm going to take glory in the being the risk taker, right? And if I'm the cautious one, then they get to take glory in being the cautious one. And then and to say, oh, wait, every time we make that move, it makes me a little uncomfortable. Now the group of people have a language around all of our geniuses, right?
Yeah.
Oh, this must make so-and-so a little bit uncomfortable. Or, oh, look at you. This is what we need you for. Something that happened to me in my prior business that has impacted my coaching in a big way is that I was able to work with my team in such a way and develop such a high level of communication that I took my marching orders from them. Like I didn't stand around saying, everybody go do these things. They were able to see exactly what was happening, lay everything out, communicate about it, and they were an active part of all the decision-making process. Right. They were very smart about how to run business, but there were a lot of times when they would turn to me and they'd go, oh, Ruth, we need you for this, right? And then yes, right. I'm actually just supporting the team at that point. I didn't. They had the vision. Like they had the vision. Like I didn't have to always remind them of the vision. There were moments where I had to remind them, but I think that it was a perfect representation of them understanding their geniuses and recognizing my genius, and I could be totally comfortable with it, and so could they. Does that make any sense?
Yeah, I think that's really critical. You were talking about they had the vision, that you didn't have to remind them. And I think that goes along with, one, being able to communicate that vision really clearly and involving all 5 senses, so that it's really buried in your DNA in a lot of respects. And in addition, taking their visions and aligning them with that overarching vision for the company as a whole, or the team as a whole, can really be critical. And I love the fact that you weren't always the one making the decisions, that you were willing to, I would say, step back, but to allow them to use their genius. And if you needed numbers and you needed detail, you had somebody who could do that. I always advise project managers, especially, to, if they're really good at managing the tasks and getting work done and this kind of thing, but they're not real good at being out there with the people and being a people person, then bring on board that assistant project manager or that deputy project manager or whatever, who is really good at that, who can be your eyes and ears out with the team and seeing what's going on and that kind of thing. So it's being complementary, not
sure. Yeah, I mean, that's why I use assessment tools now, because it wasn't until I was, in a coaching and consulting practice, and after years of trying, what is this person's genius, and how do I know for sure, and what do I really know about them, and taking all that time that it takes to do it. Like now, after using a couple of great assessment tools, it's like, in 30 minutes, they're basically going to tell me.
Yeah.
Right. They're basically going, this is the way I answer those questions. And it comes back out to me and I go, oh, wow, that was really, great. Now we can be right in that conversation. We don't have to wait months to figure out what each other's behavior style is.
Right. Ruth, I had a really interesting challenge. I had a team who had called me in to do some work for them. And they said, we're trying to figure out why we're not real effective. And, from a personality perspective, they all seem to be in the right place. But then I did a team assessment on them. And I found that they had one creator who happened to be the boss, and they had no advancers. So there was nobody taking the ball and running it down the field. They had a ton of refiners, people who were really good at the details, and is it spelled right, is the grammar correct, and that kind of thing. And they had one person who was actually executing their project. Well, it was pretty obvious as to why they weren't being successful, because it either got bogged down in refinement, or what I found was the creator skipped everybody and went right to the executor, and of course it went out half-baked and was a terrible mess. So I think you're right.
In the same way, it happens all the time. I see it all the time. I often will walk into a team environment and they'll go, hey, we are the friendliest people on the planet, but we don't have enough sales. And they've been hiring the friendliest people on the planet. But if, I know that some of the languaging between the different assessments are different, but if you don't have somebody with a high level of dominance in the group, nobody closes the sale. Everybody's like, I like people too much. I don't want them to not like me. So I actually never really asked for a sale. And if that's their genius, there's no amount of sales training. It's like they can intellectually understand at a certain point you must ask for the sale. And then at a certain point you must maybe ask again. There's a lot of rejection involved in it. And there's a lot of people who can't really stomach it. So they had a lot of good customer service going on those teams, but no one was sales.
Yeah. Oh, I so understand. So the real key in order to embrace change also, I think, is to understand their comfort level with change. As you said, there's some people who are risk takers who go, yeah, let's leap off this cliff. I'm ready to do that. And then you've got others who say, well, what shiny object am I running after today? I'm not really sure.
No. Change is very, very, very challenging for some people.
Yeah, and then you have, as you said, the friendliest people on the planet who go, change? No, we don't change here. We're real happy with how things are, the status quo. And besides which, is it good for us to make this change? And of course, you have the wonderful folks, the examiners, who want to look at every detail. So how, as a leader, do you work with all four of those to make change happen and communicate it appropriately?
Well, my prescription is always high levels of communication. So the definition of high performance, which I didn't realize until I started studying this after I sold my distribution company, what the definition of high performance really was. And I got there and I learned the definition, and I was like, oh, wow, I've been doing this for years. I had no idea. But it means that people have, there's four components. One, people have access to all the information they need. So a lot of leaders withhold information. And for a lot of different reasons. So a lot of the coaching work I do is, what are your money beliefs? Why are you withholding this? It's like, this is between me, God, and my CPA. I've heard all those kinds of things.
Right.
But high-performing teams share all the information. They share all the information. Secondly, is that everybody on the team, everybody from top to bottom, has the ability to solve problems when and where they occur, period. They have authority to solve problems. The third is, as I've already mentioned, they are very deeply participating in meaningful decision-making, not just dumb daily, what are we having for lunch decision-making, but meaningful decision-making. And because they have access to information and they're solving problems, they're smarter about the decisions they're making. And lastly, and this is almost a result of that happening, they have very broad job descriptions, which brings us back to a few points ago where, if people are just looking at a little small piece of the elephant and nobody's even telling them how they integrate with the whole elephant, they are disempowered.
Yes.
So when you open all of that up and you say, oh, well, there's all these tasks that are generally considered management tasks, but we all do those things together. We do our job requirements, but we're also involved in the bigger picture of the business. Those are the four components of a high-performing team.
So a couple things.
For me,
go
ahead.
ahead,
Please.
Well, there are a couple of things that popped up for me. One was around, you may remember the new United Motors NUMMI, and what you're talking about is what their philosophy was around building cars. They gave the people on the line the ability to make change, to pull the stop button if they thought something wasn't running correctly. And they never laid anybody off during the down, when they were down between cars. They put them in other aspects and other roles in the company. So they understood the big picture behind that particular organization. And it really almost put the union in a back seat, which I thought was very interesting. They were no longer as powerful because everyone felt that they had the ability to make change, make decisions, do things that improved the working area, that made work easier. They did a lot of just-in-time kind of stuff. And I thought that was a really powerful leadership model to have them do that in an organization that was heavily unionized.
Well, the interesting thing about unions is that unions are a response to an industrial model.
Exactly.
Right? Yeah. So when we transferred from an agrarian model to an industrial model, people were treated really poorly. And so the unions were a response to inhumane behaviors in the workplace, and they have their place, and it's still happening in some industries, and it's an absolute shame because we're not even in an industrial, world anymore, and here we're still have these industrial inhumane situations, and we have them, and in white collar, in Silicon Valley. I mean, there's still these models that are kept, and
right.
In any of those, a union is appropriate, because if people are being abused, that's where the union should step in.
Exactly.
The beauty of all the other stuff that came out of the late last century and is now really starting to, to me, I see myself as a member of the work revolution, which started at the end of the last century, and it's coming through. It's like, what is going to be the new nature of work? I mean, we have to think about this. I mean, jobs that suck are pretty much over,
Yeah.
or they should be. So if you have a job that sucks, then join the union, right? But
exactly.
if we're actually looking at all the different methodologies around high performance, we move so far beyond and so much better than anything the union prescribed that it's not necessary anymore. I mean, there might be something else that's necessary, but it's not a union.
Yeah.
It's not that kind of a labor union. So it's a good example. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. And Ruth, we're almost out of time, and I know that you have a free gift that you'd like to offer our listening audience. So if you could tell us a little bit about that and how they can access it.
Boy, I don't have in front of me where the access is for it. I think I gave you a link.
You did.
Apologize. I have a number of free reports and ebooks on my site. I made 2 available immediately for your listeners. And of course, if you sign up for my list, I have all kinds of videos on how to create a high-performing team, how to up communication, how to see each other's genius, all these topics that we've been talking about. But the 2 I made available for today are how is the Business Owner's Survival Guide, and the, oh my gosh, I didn't have it in front of me, and the Business Survival Guide, and gosh darn it. Do you have it in front of you? I'm so sorry.
Let me read this. Okay. First of all, the link is http:// highperformanceadvocates, all one word, .com/business/survival/kit/ and you say, every business leader can manage their business with less effort. Get these 2 free essential reports: Fatigue, Overwhelm, and Burnout. Every business owner can feel passionate about their business again. And the report, The Business Person's Survival Guide.
Thank you.
And for me, if you're interested in finding out whether you really are a leader or not, I find many of you are reluctant leaders and think you have talent but don't have the skills, then I suggest you go to my website at http://dare2dream-with-linda.com/herding-cats-2. And Ruth, I want to thank you so very much for being with us today and for your excellent insight into finding your genius and seeing it in everyone else.
Thank you so much for having me on the program, Linda.
Great. And just to remind you all, we do these broadcasts the second Tuesday of the month. Usually we're a little off track right now. So take a look for it on my website and also on YouTube. And that's all for now. Take care and have a great week. Bye-bye.